So, hello everyone, and I'm glad to introduce our speaker, Leanne Wong, who's going to speak on supply chain and vendor management.
Yeah, so my name is Leanne. I work in AI-based RegTech, regulatory technology company. So basically, we just by way of introduction, provide solutions to financial services companies to organize a customized view of global regulations. Yeah, and some of our best practices include supply chain and vendor management. So I'll start by saying that vendor management is a process that is best formalized. And these includes defining the requirements and reviewing any vendors that should be selected based on those requirements, as well as any risks to the organization that should be considered. And once the vendor is selected, just as an overview, they'll be monitored on a regular basis, and the risk is also continuously monitored. And other than that, it's also best to provide reviews and investigations on these third-party providers to assess their capabilities, any viability or competitiveness in the industry as a whole. And other factors are also maybe their track record. Have they previously violated any security policies? How appropriate it is to the company's business requirements, and any reputational risk as well. It's really important to have the same level of compliance for all the third-party consultants as well as internal employees as a minimum. For example, there should be an internal company sponsor to be assigned and ensure that they comply with all the policies. And this can include either an individual or department assigned to each new contractor, and this person would be responsible for the ongoing monitoring of the services provided or any dispute resolution that may be needed in the course of engaging the third-party contractor. Before we begin the purchasing or implementation process, there should be an assessment to consider how critical the application is, the value or the confidentiality, sensitivity of the information provided, whether it's appropriate for that specific vendor to manage, any past record of misuse, and system interconnection, which means the reliability between the internal and external systems. And these will determine the overall controls that will be engineered in the application. So it's best to also consider vendors that have been vetted by external industry providers and industry groups like accreditation, for example. So going through the process, one of the first things to do is assessing the request of third-party access. They should only be for specific use. Approval should be given when it's enabled and also disabled upon completion. So what is the nature of use, the specific business needs, the specific time frame that this access is provided, as well as the duration of the access. And if there is a long-term connection that's needed, then what are the other authentication methods that we can consider? For example, tokens or two-factor authentication that will try to bolster the security of the long-term access for third parties. The network connections as well will have security implications. So it's best that a network design that's been approved is configured, and they would have the same access restriction as the internal users as a minimum. And we should also consider like what is the work efficiency requirements that are needed. Any physical access, for example, to facilities, specific hosts and specific applications on those hosts, and wherever possible, how these applications can be segmented from the production network so there's no interference. And after that, we would review the security controls for the third parties. For example, do they have a specific methodology for testing any network penetration attempts in the past? Any reports of attacks, and what are the recommendations that can be taken afterwards to be implemented? So for example, if the company feels like they should take these extra precautions before they onboard the vendor, that should be considered as well. Other factors would be the operating system, the network and the database controls that are relied on. And if they have critical information processing services, then how would they correspond to the company's own processing requirements? So that's part of business continuity as well. So a key concern would be protecting customer data, especially when personally identifiable information is involved. So contractors to have access to these systems should be vetted, and it's a key consideration as well because the data may be specified to be used for a specific time and a specific purpose. So third-party agreements, they would quantify any performance measures and have a right to audit clause. So this means that the company has, a provision to review the third-party services from time to time, as well as include any security requirements that are specific based on the service level agreement. And also the third party should immediately disclose any known violations. So part of having a third party on board would be the monitoring process. So regular reports to the vendor managers. Are the business requirements being met from time to time? Is the supplier still competitive with any alternative suppliers? And what are the other risks that will come up? So known or unknown risks that will be needed to be addressed in order to continue these an effective service delivery. So I touched a bit on testing, and after that, it would be part of the management's responsibility to see if any recovery testing should be accounted for. And this analysis should also be specified in the service level agreement by the external provider. I'm just trying to, okay. The source code should be maintained and supported by the vendor. So for example, if one of the components is no longer available, what can be done to ensure the continued use for the business, and also the best practice of archiving any previous versions. The third party should be able to guarantee the code integrity and the absence of any backdoors. It may be also good to consider a third-party escrow provider to determine if the source code is critical, and any changes over time can also be stored within this escrow service. So post-implementation, so previously I talked about pre-implementation, and then after we implement or purchase the product, how do we verify any security or privacy features, such as access control and logging, any threat modeling, or what are the other issues identified? And any new changes or features would be communicated to the customers as well. So business continuity, this involves like recovery procedures, any contingency plans. What are the worst case scenarios? Like, do you have alternative vendors on hand, for example, or what are the in-house recovery procedures? And these should probably be separated from the primary service providers so that they're not subject to the same hazards as well, to ensure the business continuity. And this is just an overview of the whole process, and pre and post implementation, selection, onboarding, and so on. Yeah, so that's in a nutshell what my best practices are on supply chain or vendor management.